All right, I'm going to take 10 calls or so for Webster. Then we're going to get into false flag terror, that ace in the hole. This huge police state, open martial law, open forced inoculation, swine flu hysteria. They're only intensifying the fear-mongering and hyping. And that's what's so important about all this. So that's coming up with Webster Tarpley. Right now, let's go to Warren in California. Warren, thanks for holding her on the air.
Okay, Alex. I have two things I want to mention. I believe it was Sunday night on Coast to Coast that George, that sets in for George Norrie from Las Vegas, his news at the beginning of the show, he mentioned that two Japanese individuals were apprehended on an Italian border, and they had $120 billion in U.S. treasuries.
No, that was in Bloomberg and Associated Press.
Okay.
That is true, so we'll ask Tarpley about that. Go ahead.
I have no particular opinion. It's a lot of money, but Switzerland is a paradise of flight capital, so I don't know. Is that really that new? The amount is rather large.
And what's the other point? What's the other point, caller?
Yes. I have an article from 1983 of the San Francisco Chronicle. I don't have it right here with me. It's about 400 miles away in storage.
That's okay.
But the article says the Fed's ready to distribute private individuals' property. And what it was, when they had the banking holiday in 1933, they gathered up all the stuff that was in safety deposit boxes all over the United States.
Yeah, they made folks turn their gold in, and then they gave them paper money back, and then a year later doubled the price. They are talking about taking private property, seizing pensions to feed that into the bankers. So let me ask Webster about that. Yeah, this new Federal Reserve, quote, reform bill, openly, I'm sure you've seen it, Webster.
Yeah, sure.
Says they can take over from a hot dog stand to a car dealership. Obama, it's admitted, if you give millions to the Democratic Party, he'll let your GM dealership stay open. But if you don't make the payoffs, they give it to somebody else or shut it down, even though it has an incredible value. They take the franchise. Give us your take on that.
Well, that is the corporate state, the Mussolini fascist corporate state, as imposed now by the Wall Street banking community, where the Wall Street banking community takes over the government and runs it. Now, of course, in the middle of that, somebody like Obama's got to maintain his own political interest. I would just point to this Federal Reserve question, though. The point of Obama's regulation is that the Fed becomes the regulator of systemic risk, and as you say, can therefore argue that the hot dog stand poses systemic risk to the derivatives bubble and the banking community. That got a very bad reception in Congress. A lot of Democrats in the House who don't like that one. I saw, I think Brad Sherman of California was one of them who said he didn't like it. And now you've got this thing, Congressman Issa, also of California, has come out with this thing about Bernanke engaging in threats and blackmail against another villain, another finance oligarch, Lewis, the head of Bank of America. And while we've been talking today, there have been hearings in the House Banking Committee where Bernanke has been treated rougher than I've ever seen a Fed chairman get treated by a whole bunch of congressmen, including Republicans and Democrats. It's sort of conservative Republicans, anti-Wall Street Republicans, if you will, and at the same time sort of these New Deal Democrats getting together to beat up Bernanke. I think now the political vulnerability of the Federal Reserve is probably greater than it ever was. I think the auditing of the Fed is a great idea. That should be done. And then go on, though, because that will then have more scandals. Time to have new Peccora hearings against the Fed.
All right, stay there, Webster. We're going to come back. I want you to elaborate on, if you audit the Fed, that begins the ending of the Fed or the federalization of it. This has never been federal, folks. I will be right back with Webster Tarpley in 1 minute.
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done has been right.
I'm Alex Jones. We're talking to Webster Tarpley, continuing with your phone calls. We haven't even gotten into the ace in the hole the establishment has, staged crises. So it's all coming up in the next 30 minutes or so with our guest. And I've got some other video clips and news I want to cover after he leaves us near the end of this transmission. We're going to go to Johan, Anthony, Annie, and others, Robert, in just a moment. Webster, you're talking about ending the Fed. I mean, this is so criminal, so obviously corrupt. It's coming out that Congress is subpoenaing over Bank of America, ordering them to buy up different assets, different brokerage firms. Because, you know, the big mega bankers at the Volcker or Kissinger or David Rockefeller level, they're always in the news. In fact, Volcker's in the news today, and Bloomberg at press conferences blaming the CEOs, blaming the brokerage firm heads, who aren't they just hired captains or mercenaries for the larger investment groups? And isn't this the elite trying to throw a few little bankers or middle-sized bankers to the wolves, to throw the wolves off of their trail, or the bloodhounds off of their trail? What's going on here?
The fascist corporate state, and it is a government-sponsored compulsory cartel. It obeys the logic of finance, right, of Wall Street in this case. A government-sponsored compulsory cartel for the purpose of driving down production. You see that in Detroit. Factories close. Driving down wages. The UAW has had to eat tremendous losses, right? They've been driven down to sweatshop wage levels. So you're going to drive down production, you're going to drive down wages, and you're going to prop up the fictitious derivatives and the other fictitious pieces of paper capital that are floating around. Notice the big robbery in the Detroit business with General Motors in particular was a $6 billion payment in cash was made to Citibank and J.P. Morgan Chase, while the UAW, instead of getting guaranteed health care from General Motors, they got some shares of General Motors stock, which I think are likely to be worthless. So the risk was shifted off of General Motors and shifted onto the UAW. Another good example that people who say that Obama is helping the unions must be standing on their heads, because he's doing the opposite. He's destroyed the UAW. He's driven down their wages. He's taken away their benefits. He's looted their health care funds, and he's going to do the same thing with the teachers' union. So Obama is a consummate union buster, so much so that a lot of people can't even see what he's doing. But the UAW basically voted themselves out of existence as any kind of an industrial union. But this is all part of the corporate state. You've got to create a cartel. It means you've got to discipline the others. A lot of little fish are going to get fed to a lot of big fish. The winners are picked by the government, right, based on, well, J.P. Morgan Chase is a winner. Goldman Sachs is a winner. Citibank looks more and more like a loser. Bank of America, probably a loser. And naturally, the squawking you hear from Wall Street is from the people who are on the losing end. Look at Washington Mutual Bank, right, the savings bank, fed to J.P. Morgan Chase. A lot of people very, very upset about that. Or Bank of America told, you're going to eat the losses of Merrill Lynch, right? This is all the disciplining that goes on in, again, the fascist corporate state, because that's the only way to describe it.
So if they are unopposed, would they reduce us to Stone Age, running around in loincloths while they're in armored compounds in high technology reservations away from us? I mean, because that's what they describe in their white papers, while they, I guess, have hunter-killer robots out, like Zardoz hunting us down or something?
Well, I mean, it may eventually come to that, but what you can see right now with Obama is the following.
Now, I was being somewhat sarcastic, but Webster, my point is there just no end to their thieving? They will destroy all of civilization for themselves.
Again, the $1.5 quadrillion derivatives bubble is a black hole, and you can shovel all the austerity loot and sacrifices and cuts into that you want. It's still going to be bankrupt. So that means they're going to gouge Medicare and Medicaid. And then, says Orszag, they're going to go on and start reducing your Social Security pension, which for a lot of people is going to be the only thing they
because
have.
None of the taxes you pay will go to any services now. It's all to debt created out of nothing by the bankers. Stay there.
And derivatives bailouts.
Yeah, derivatives bailouts. Going to come back and blitz through the phone calls on the other side. Webster Griffin Tarpley. All right, Webster Griffin Tarpley is our guest. I want to try to hurry through your phone calls so I can get into, separate from Webster's solutions and ideas he's got, where he sees them taking us, and politically as a realist, how he sees things unfolding. Because I agree with him, without some type of staged crises or terror attacks, Obama is a political commodity that is losing value by the day, and you will see an acceleration. we've seen him lose, depending on the poll gauge, 20 to 30-plus points in the last 3 months. And we see an acceleration in that loss. So that's important. That's coming up in a few minutes. Right now, let's talk to Johan in Europe. Thanks for holding, Johan.
I would like Webster Tarpley to explain how the state of Israel could influence the country of Cyprus to prevent Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney's second attempt to break the illegal blockade of Gaza. Tonight she's going to be on Mike Rivero, What Really Happened. As even before the boat had docked at the Cyprus port, there was an official waiting there with papers saying that it was unseaworthy, even before he had even taken a look at it. How could this little country have so much influence on